the election year tensions between the president and the doctors warning him about the COVID threat. Jared Kushner talked to Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Bob Woodward back in April with the president's blessing. Remember, little context here, the early White House task force guidelines to slow the spread, those were issued in mid-March. 1 month later, the White House issued reopening guidelines as the president grew anxious that coronavirus restrictions were hurting the economy and his re-election chances. Listen here to Kushner describe this critical moment.
The last thing was kind of doing the guidelines, which was interesting, and that in my mind was almost like, it was almost like Trump getting the country back from the doctors, right? In the sense that what he now did was, he's going to own the open up. There were 3 phases. There was the panic phase, the pain phase, and then the comeback phase. That doesn't mean there's not still a lot of pain, and there won't be pain for a while. But that basically was, we've now put out rules to get back to work. Trump's now back in charge. It's not the doctors. They've kind of, we have like a negotiated settlement.
We have this audio because of our great special correspondent, Jamie Gangel, who is here with more. Jamie, just the tone there, the president getting the country back from the doctors.
So they wanted to sideline the doctors, simple and clear. They saw the doctors as adversaries. When you say negotiated settlement, it sounds more like the end of a war. And John, it just underscores the Trump-Kushner political strategy. They had one concern, Election Day. Once again, as Woodward showed throughout the book, a failure of leadership, a betrayal of trust. And as we see the numbers surging again, it's going on today.
And in this audio, Jamie, give us some context here. We know Jared Kushner is incredibly close to the president, if not his most trusted advisor in the White House, and they've had a lot of turmoil on the staff there, and he has some very harsh words for many of his former colleagues.
Look, for the past 4 years, this is not a surprise. We have seen Trump call people names. We have seen him blame the top people around him. Kushner, in this audio, echoes those sentiments, but listen carefully to how he describes the people who are now at the White House.
The most dangerous people around the president are overconfident idiots, right? Because that has a way sometimes of getting past his defense mechanism, because if you're overconfident, then sometimes, on a topic where he doesn't have other people around to kind of validate it, then he can sometimes say, okay, let's go with that. So that's kind of, I think if you look at the evolution over time, we've gotten rid of a lot of the overconfident idiots, and now we've got a lot more thoughtful people who kind of know their place and know what to do.
John, I just want to emphasize those words, know their place. It's clear that whether it's administration officials or doctors, health experts, no surprise, Trump wants to be the one who's in charge.
And we are 4 years now, Jamie, into the Trump takeover of the Republican Party, and Jared has some pretty blunt thoughts about that.
Right. I don't think this is going to sit well with lifelong Republicans. It's probably not a surprise to them, but hearing Kushner's words, he is dismissive of the party, the Republican platform, and he credits his father-in-law with a hostile takeover.
And so, you look at like the Republican Party platform, it's a document meant to like piss people off, basically, more, because it's done by activists.
Yeah.
So you have a disproportionality between what issues people are vocal on and what the people, the voters, really care about. And what Trump's been able to do is, I say he basically did a full hostile takeover of the Republican Party, and I don't think it's even as much about the issues. I think it's about the attitude.
It's about the attitude. It's about the person. It's about the person. This is the Trump party. It's not the Republican Party you and I grew up covering, certainly, if you go back. There's one last clip that you have, and this one where we get some insights about how important Jared is to the president.
So this is actually new sound of Donald Trump. I just want to say 6 days before Election Day, the president may not be happy to hear these comments from Kushner played in public, but he will have a hard time divorcing himself from them. Here's what he told Woodward about his son-in-law.
I told Jared to speak to you, and I believe he has.
Yes,
And I just told him a little while ago that if you would do me a favor, Jared, and coordinate a little bit with Bob so that Bob can speak to anybody he wants to, Jared will handle a very capable guy, Jared. You can't get people like this.
We talked once,
One
and
smart
I'm
cookie.
scheduled to see
And
him.
if you could deal with Jared a little bit, see me whenever you want.
There's just so many ways to unpack this, but I want to get back to the point you were making earlier about the people around the president and who's in charge. That works both ways. Jared clearly made clear there, if you work in this White House, the president's the boss. And the president has this thing where Jared's essentially his eyes and ears to keep people in line. He's the lieutenant he trusts the most.
No question. I've spoken to cabinet members, senior former White House officials. When Jared calls, you pick up the phone. You listen. So there has been a strategy here. It's Trump's strategy, but it was also Jared Kushner's strategy. They wanted Trump to be the good news, open up, cheerleader president. And here we are losing more people than ever, record numbers. And that strategy has not changed.
And again, I'll go back to the beginning. You started with sound. This is back in April, 1 month in, essentially, to the White House response. In the middle of March, they introduced the 15 days to stop the spread. Then they extend those guidelines. And then the president gets antsy. The economy's shut down. He's worried about re-election. He says, let's reopen. The plan they put on paper was actually a pretty good one. But you hear, Jared, they're taking the country back from the doctors. Trump's now in charge again. It was the president who, within days of releasing those guidelines, essentially gave governors the green light to blow through them.
Correct. And I think what's very important is you see that there was never a federal plan. The plan was, as Jared says, put the hard stuff on the governors, foist all of that onto them. No federal mandate, no testing and tracing. And Trump was going to be there just to be the one who was good news, open it up. Not his fault.
Not his fault. Well, we're 5 days away from an election where we will see if the American people agree with that perspective. Jamie Gangel, again, grateful for this very important reporting and the context to put it into context. Thank you.